So we're going to build a simple Flask API and use GitLab to do continuous CI and probably continuous deployment. So let's begin by creating a simple app.py file, which is going to house our Flask app. So I've already installed Flask in virtual env. So we shall just import from Flask. With that, we can create a simple app. So once we have that, we can add a route. And this route will simply return hello. Okay, so let's try to run that. Python app.py. Okay, that should be running. However, oh, okay. Need to export this as the Flask app and use Flask to run. Okay, the address is already in use. Let's first see. And okay, let's kill all instances 6706. Let's run the Flask app again. So we now see our Flask app running. If we go in the browser, localhost 5000 should be getting hello. Okay, so that's good. One more thing, we ought to make our environment development so that we can have auto reload. So let's first kill this terminal, export the Flask app again, app.py, and also add another environment variable for the Flask environment, which we shall say is development. And with that, we can run the Flask app again. So you do now see that our environment is development, meaning we can get auto reload whenever we make a change in our file. So the purpose of this is to show you how to have auto CI built into our project using GitLab. With that, we need to automate some tasks, and in this case, we're going to automate our testing and linking. So if we're to run tests, let's use the inbuilt test runner of unit test. Let's create a class called test, which inherits from unit test. The test case. So we can start adding our test methods here. So we're going to add an endpoint where a user passes where a user passes two numbers and the endpoint returns the summation of those two numbers, the sum of those two numbers. So we shall call this test method test sum. Shall assert equal Let's try to do something here. Sum of 4 plus 5. So that sum should be equal to 9. So let's open another terminal and try to run that test. Need to if is equal to main test dot. So with that we can run our test and we see our test is running. So we've set up our tests. So let's proceed and add. So with test-driven development, we'll expect to have probably a method called sum in our app.py, and that method expects to receive two values and returns the summation. Okay. So if we run this test again, it fails because we do not yet have that method implemented in app.py. So if we go into app.py and we add that method, and a plus b. So should we run our test now? It passes. Okay. So that's good. Next thing is to add an endpoint called calc. So with this, we shall make this this endpoint a post. Should we make it a post or get? Let's make it a get with request arguments, and we will pick our values from the args. Okay. So expect an argument in there, and b, expect to find a b argument, an argument passed called b. Once we have that, we can sum the two values and return the answer. Okay. So with that, let us test and see if it works. A is 9 and b is 6. Let's call the endpoint calc. Okay. So we do see here it just concatenates. So I want to make sure it actually adds. So we shall make this int as well as this. So if we try this again, okay, don't a valid response. Why? The view function, the return type must be a string dict tuple, but it was an int. Okay, so let's make sure that our return type here is a string. So there we are. Once you pass two arguments in A and B, the result is sum. The values are summed and the result is returned as a string. Okay, so that is good. Now let's consider this as our API, and let's start adding some functions that we're going to automate in our GitLab CI. For example, let's do tests. So you've noticed that we are running our tests using Python test.py. Okay, so let's proceed and add our GitLab ci.yml. So in writing your gitlab-ci.yml file, start with the stages you expect to have. So here we will have one stage which is called test. Then you have the stage down here. So with each stage, you can either choose to use one image for all the stages, or you could have an image per stage, since GitLab CI runs entirely on Dockerfile, on Docker images. So in this stage, you're going to use the latest Python image, the latest Python Docker image. The stage name is, so we have a job. Essentially, a CI file consists of, it runs a sequence of jobs, and those jobs can be broken down into stages. So we have a job here called test. Let's call it test app, and it will be under the test stage. So we could have had another stage here, probably called lint, and maybe we will have probably lint app here, a job called lint app, and then something under there. But let's first deal with the tests. So we've decided we'll have a test stage, and we are going to have a job called test app. So before we run our Python test.py, certain things we need to do. First, we'll do this, print out the Python version. That's for debugging in case something goes wrong. And let's install our virtual env. With that installed, we'll create a virtual env, activate it. That installed, we shall install Flask, and then run our test.py. Now this is what will happen when GitLab runs our CI file. Now that we have that, we need to make this a repository. So let's do git init. Let's add a gitignore file. Gitignore. So there's certain things we need to ignore here, like the VS Code folder, which is specific to my local repo. The venv folder, that's the virtual environment. One can always install the virtual environment on their machine. So if you notice, every folder we ignore will be grayed out here in VS Code. So that's one trick to notice. Once we have that, if we do git status, you will see that we have the following files that are untracked. Now there is also this PyCache folder, which should also be ignored. Our git status only shows us the gitignore app.py, gitlab-ci file, and test. So let's proceed. Let's go to GitLab and create a new project. So if you haven't signed up to GitLab, it's easy to sign up. You can easily do that using your Google account or GitHub account. So let's call this Flask API. Simple Flask API. We'll make that public, then we'll create the project. So once we have that, GitLab shows us how we can push an existing repo. We take this and we add in our local copy. So now let's first add every file that's untracked, create an initial commit, and push. Origin master. So if we refresh here, okay, why isn't our pipeline running? Oh yeah, this gitlab.ci file is actually supposed to be .gitlab-ci file. So let's change that. Let's commit. Fix gitlab-ci.yml file naming. Let's push. Okay, we need to do this again. Push origin master. If we refresh here, we see a build has been set off because we now have the CI file correctly named in our repo. So let's take a look at this. A pipeline is a build that is set off whenever you push a commit to GitLab, and the pipeline consists of a sequence of jobs. So in this case, we only have our one job running. So if we take a look here, GitLab Runner is the application that runs our jobs. And here it's using the Docker image that is specified in our test stage Python latest. So it's collected the virtual env, it's created a virtual env, It's activated it has installed Flask, and it has run our command to run the tests in our app, and the job has succeeded. So let's see, we have a green pipeline has passed. That's how you can easily add automation for your GitLab CI repos.